From the depths of desperation to the heights of financial freedom, we unmask the stories of courageous warriors who battled their money monsters. Join us to deep dive into financial survivor stories. Hey there, my name is Carly and I'm excited to bring you our first episode of Financial Survivor Stories. And welcoming our first guest today is Sam. She will be telling us her personal story about being financially abused by her own husband, who gambled her whole entire savings away, leaving her hundreds of thousands of debt. Without any delay, let's get into it. Welcome, Sam. Thank you for coming on today and being vulnerable and allowing us to hear your truly inspiring story. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me, Carly.
It's good to have you. I just want to start off by sort of understanding a bit more about you. If we could go right back to the start. So, sort of rewind a time before you met your husband. So your working life or your savings. Tell me about that.
I was financially stable. I had zero debt. I had about $20,000 in the bank. I had zero loans. And then I met him. Well, re-met him. I've known him since I was a child. And obviously we started a relationship. I worked a lot of hours. So I worked 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, weekends. I already had a little child.
What job were you doing?
I was in the car industry and I sold finance for the cars. So obviously Saturdays and Sundays I was at work. And he was fantastic. No issues. He did tell me he had a gambling problem, but it was under wraps. And I suppose when you don't have a gambling problem, you don't, or never really gambled, you don't really understand what that means.
So you had savings from your work? That's what you were saving up for, something in particular?
No, just I had a small child at the time. Just saving to save, just to always have that backup in case, anything did go south or I wanted to leave my job or anything because, I had a company car, they paid for my petrol. So if anything did go bad, I would have had to buy a car. I would have had to, do all that sort of stuff. So, and 2 years into our...
How much did you have in savings?
20,000. And then about 2 years in, I fell pregnant. So we started really, really buckling down with the savings. We cut out a lot of things and to try and buy a house. And we purchased a house. We moved into the house. I gave birth. And we had made the decision, even though I earned more money, that we both, because I worked with my first child throughout the whole time after he was born. So I never got that stay-at-home time and mum guilt, as we all have. We both decided that I would be the one who would stop working and he would continue to work and we could survive off his wages plus what I had in the bank to carry us through because we had no debt. So the only debt we were going to have was the mortgage. And they gave us a credit card with the mortgage, as they do. I don't know if that's just standard practice. I didn't ask for the credit card. Somehow I got a credit card. And he said, it's better for you. What you do is you just live off that every month and then every month pay it down. And then that way, it would somehow help our mortgage. But I don't know how that ever worked because it never went into a separate account to reduce my mortgage. I'm paying my life off of the credit card. Anyway, about probably the day my son was born, to be honest, the power changed. I don't know what happened, but it did. And about a month in, I wasn't contributing. Anyway. He made me feel terrible, so I went back to work for a little bit, and I, earned very good money for a day. So I would work 3 days a week, and then, of course, I was a really bad mum because I would have left my child. So I either don't contribute financially or I'm a bad mother. Which one do you want to pick? I am.
So this is what he was telling you?
This is what he was telling me.
Okay.
It sort of preps your mindset that you start to believe what they tell you. So I stopped working again. And then all of a sudden, our $10,000 credit card was maxed out. He had blown about $3,000 on this site that I'd never heard of or seen. So I Googled it, as you do. And and it was some gambling site overseas. And he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's just one mistake. I didn't think I would ever do this again, blah, blah, blah." And I believed him, as you do. Like, you think, "Oh, okay, he didn't mean it, la, la, la." And then we paid down our credit card. I think by the third time getting it to a zero balance, we had $10,000 on it. By the third time of a zero balance, and each time that we paid it down, it was from gambling. We had joint accounts. Then he sneakily would get a certain portion of his wages sent to a bank account that wasn't our joint account, and would say to me, "Oh, it's because I didn't work a certain amount of hours," or "It's because I didn't do this," or that's why I was seeing a lower amount. 6 months, 7 months later, of course, I found the other account and his wage was going in there, and it slowly got more and more and more, and that was his gambling fund.
So when you say you were paying off the credit card, you say you were both paying it off?
Yep. So if on his days off, I would go to work, so I wasn't labelled a bad mother.
Okay.
So my 2 days' work is $1,000 in comparison to his 5-day work, which I think he was envious of in the end. His lying got worse, which I didn't know at the time was because of gambling.
What lies was he telling you?
Oh, you name it. I got an extra loan out because he owed someone else money. I wasn't allowed to ask why he owed the money. It was to help me. It was to pay our mortgage. It was because I spend money. It was always my fault. No matter what, how, when, it was me. It was because of me.
Did you not want to ask him, like, really what the loan was for? Did you feel like you couldn't? What would happen if you asked him?
It would be my fault.
What would be your fault?
It would be my fault that he needed money, or it would be my fault that he gambled. I drove him to do it.
Did you understand that being true at the time?
No, at the time I believed him, unfortunately. So he would say, "This is what triggered it." So I would change that behaviour. And the same result would happen.
What were the triggers for him?
So if I got angry over a lie he's told me, in hindsight, I'm laughing now because now I see that I was an idiot, but it wasn't funny at the time. So if I found a lie and I knew that he was vulnerable at that time, I wouldn't bring it up. I would hold it and hold it and hold it, wait till I thought was a good time. So it wouldn't be on payday, wouldn't be around payday. And of course, no matter what, the same result happened. And it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't actually me. I suppose when you're told it's you, you believe it's you. And then his mum was going overseas, and we finally got the credit card down again for the 4th time.
Okay. And this is 7 months later after the baby?
This one, the starting of the gambling was 7 months later. Probably about 17, 18 months in was the 4th time we'd paid the card down. And the 4th time I was told it's never going to happen again. It's a new start. Mum's going, because his mum wanted to go home to her home country, and we were going to fund it. So I looked at the credit card, and because you get live on internet banking, $2,500 spent like that. So I rang the bank. I said, "Please, can you help me? I need a stop on this card. How can I get it stopped? I'm supposed to buy plane tickets with this money, and, he's blowing it. He's got a gambling problem, blah, blah." "Sorry, sweetheart, we can't help you because it's in joint names." "Sorry? It's in joint names, we can't help you." I said, "So he can go and blow the full 10 grand, and you are fully aware that he has a gambling problem, and I don't want him to do that, and it's my money too?" She said, "Yes, and without his signature, there is nothing we can do." So he blew the money. And then the bank gave him another $70,000 personal loan because, that's what you do after you've just been told that he has a gambling problem.
So the same bank lent him $70,000 of a loan?
Car worth $17,000.
Okay, but the thing is, he actually had good credit history at this time.
Yes, at this time he still did. So there was no payday lenders. There was no anything at that stage. It was about 2 years in that's when it went south. So he started hocking all our things, every ring he's ever brought me, gone to the hock shop. The most recent was the kids' PlayStation 5. Anything he can take, he will take, and then he will feel bad for it. and give it back. The last 4 years, he hasn't paid for the mortgage. So we're about $200,000 in arrears, and we're at the point where the bank is make or break.
So throughout this whole period, this has been 2.5 years.
This has been 8 years. 8 years.
8 years? Okay. So the sacrifices that you've made throughout this time.
I've sacrificed me. I've sacrificed my children, all for him. All because I thought I could save him.
And how did it affect your relationship with other people?
I isolated myself for a long time, probably 5 years, because people get sick of hearing it. If you're going to continue...
Your friends and family, they get...
My mum, she doesn't want to hear it anymore. If you're going to keep putting yourself in that situation, they get tired of hearing it because, they see the red flag. They see the issue. And I make an excuse for it.
Did you see the red flag early? Can you pinpoint a time where you saw that red flag and ignored it?
Yes, 100% I did.
When was that time?
It's going to make me look really stupid, but anyway, it was before I had Sebastian.
The reason why we're doing this is because we have, and there are millions of women that go through this every single day, every hour, every minute, and there is nothing stupid or idiotic about it. It's the fact that you got put into a situation, you were backed into a wall, and you were doing everything that you could possibly do to try and get out of it and, stay sane and, try and be there for your children. There's nothing stupid about it. When love comes into the picture, unfortunately, sometimes we just get blindsided, by the thought of what could be. What was that point when you saw the red flag?
So he had an ex-girlfriend living at his mother's house that I was unaware of, and when we were together. And my whole family begged me to leave. And I stupidly, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I didn't prove them wrong. And look, I'm gone now. He's making improvements on himself without me.
Let's just back up a little bit, right? Because I want to know, obviously, when you're going through that, right, on a day-to-day, right? You've obviously got work. You've got children. How are you managing your daily life?
By being numb. He had done so much by then that anything he did no longer hurt.
Yeah. You were broken.
Yeah. I no longer felt bad. I no longer believed it. Don't get me wrong, I would still sit there and cop the 2 hours of how I'm a bad person, but I stopped fighting back. And if I stopped fighting back, the house was calmer because it was only his voice. So I'd just agree and agree and agree and agree and agree. And that would make him shut up faster.
Would you say you lost the power to speak throughout that whole time?
Not lost. He let me speak, but he would counteract everything I said and twist it and turn it to be my fault. There's only so long you can hear that to the point where you just go, well, what's the point? What's the point of saying a word? This will be over faster if you just be quiet and just agree. We had an altercation 2 years ago and it got physical. And I threw the contents of a glass at him. And I suppose this was the turning point of I stopped fighting with him from that day. And I got charged for assault because I threw liquid. And he got away scot-free. So that was my turning point. I just stopped arguing from there because being honest got me charged. So what's the point? Just keep your mouth shut. You've got a suspended sentence. I raised my voice once and I could go to jail. So I kept my mouth closed for the kids.
And you feel like this whole time where you've been trying to battle this relationship and try and keep yourself above water, for your family. You're doing it for your family. You want this happy ending. You want to continue and you want to believe every time he comes back and says sorry and everything is going to be okay that you are going to. Is there something that kept you going? What was the thing that kept you going that stopped you leaving? Was there a memory of very early on where it was really good, or what was it that kept you in that position?
It was my child.
Okay.
My child would always say, I want my mum and dad together. I don't want you guys to break up. I want us all in the one house. And it was him. It was solely him. I put up with it.
You had this huge responsibility of trying to make it work.
Yeah, and then you see that your child starts to get the same characteristics or argues the same way or, does things that of that age probably shouldn't be doing. And that's when I went, enough, that's enough. Like, this is not better for him. Being in this situation is not better.
So at that point, how much debt are you in?
I am in about without the mortgage, I'm in about $80,000 debt that I wouldn't have had if I didn't get him loans.
And the mortgage was how much?
And the mortgage, we started off borrowing $500,000 and we now owe about $680,000.
Okay. And that's after how long?
That's after 8 years, going on 9.
So you obviously had no savings left. All those savings were put towards the credit card, I'm assuming?
Credit cards, yeah, whatever else was needed, day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. So what, at this point, what is your wake-up call?
My wake-up call was actually, I had gone out and he had the kids for the first time probably ever. And he sent me a text and said, can you send me $40 to feed them? And I was like, I'm like, if you're a grown man and you don't have $40 to feed them at the end of a week, that's a massive issue. And that was just when this is way too much. So I started looking for a house behind his back to make my life easy. I obviously told him once I had been approved and gotten it. I had not made it a secret. I wanted to end the relationship, although he still acts like it was a shock. And yeah, I just got the kids up one day and packed the car and off we went. And sitting in a house that you did all by yourself, it's actually a massive achievement because, I thought I'd never do it. And he told me I couldn't. You
did it.
Yeah.
You got out. There's a lot of people that can't make that step. So the wake-up call was obviously, really it's back to your children again.
100%.
So all these years, well, they obviously have one of the best moms. Your whole life, their whole life has been you trying to survive and be the absolute ultimate warrior mother, and give them the best that they could possibly have, and that's what you have given them in circumstances that were beyond your control, right? Sort of in regards to your financial situation with him. Are you still together in all of the debts, or how does that work?
Well, I have a lot in my name that he has nothing to do with, but in saying that he has nothing to do with, I wouldn't have got those loans if it wasn't to get him out of trouble. But there comes a point where you can't stay for that reason, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, he's never going to pay it. So you have to get to the point where you just have to suck it up and accept that that's what you've allowed. And he's never going to honour his word. He never has, still to this day. So I have to walk away, and I would rather walk away with the clothes on my back and start again than have it somehow twisted into, he's done it for me. You couldn't do it without me. He would have if I needed him for anything. But he'd be the last person in the world I'd go to if I needed a thing.
See, before him, even though you've obviously been strong throughout, you were obviously an independent, strong woman working all those hours, saving, and it was him that has sort of held you back.
Manipulated and taken control, and unfortunately, I allowed it, and this is the position I'm in now.
Yeah. But the position is that you are out and you're making steps to the right sort of areas now. In regards to every single day must be super hard. Like these feelings don't just go away. They don't just go, oh, I've got into my car, I've taken everything out of my car now, so now I'm actually normal. I don't have him in my life anymore. Like that's just irrelevant, right? So one, you've got children together, and two, you've got debts together. So how do you keep going every single day?
I've cut out and I'll abbreviate the BS. So I do not let a conversation continue if it serves me no happiness. So if he swears at me, if he raises his voice slightly, I just cut the phone off. If it is not going to be productive, then I can't participate. And he has now learnt that I will just cut it off, and the conversations are much more productive. They're either about our children or about the position we're in and how we're going to fix it.
How have you stayed motivated to not get back into the situation? Because a lot of women do. A lot of women, they leave. I mean, we could be talking about men as well, but usually this does happen to women, right? Which is financial abuse, and typically financially gaslighting your partner, especially when you can't have conversations without arguments and being made to feel that it's your fault when he's the one that's gambling, right? So this happens all the time, but in some weird way you start believing it. So what's motivated you to stay away?
The fact that I have now got the mental capacity to remind myself that none of this is my fault. His problem is his problem. I can't fix him. I can't change him. And it took me a long time to understand that. I suppose gambling is like a drug, and if they don't want the help, they're not going to get the help. And I rang Gamblers Anonymous, and they're the ones that coaxed me and said, you need to understand that none of it's your fault. Anything he's telling you is just to cover up what his next move is or what his last move was. You need to start taking that with a grain of salt and letting it slide off your back. And it's probably the best advice I ever got at that time. Because she was 100% right. And I was at the point where I was going a bit crazy, going like, but I know it's not me. Like, I'm not this mental.
I'm going to ask that, like, how did it affect your mental health? I mean,
For a long time, I believed him. So for a long time, I didn't see my own worth. And to be honest, by accident, well, not by accident, my sister died, who unfortunately had a long-time mental health issue and gambling and drug problems. And she took her own life. And I was starting to just stay at home and be in bed all day. And I thought the only way to get out of this is if I start to exercise. So I'll just start at home, doing like a little thing on your phone and like following that and getting myself out of bed. And then I joined a gym, and it changed my whole perspective on my own mental health. So it's probably the best thing I ever did, to be honest.
You don't have to talk about this, but obviously with your sister being a gambler, this was before your husband. She was doing that before. Okay.
Yes. She's bad.
Is there anything? I mean, people say that we, especially when you stay with someone that's clearly doing the wrong thing, you're either, normally you're not ignorant, or definitely not stupid. You're normally very empathetic to that person because you want to fix them. You think that you have the ability and the power because you're that close to that person that you have the power to fix them. Obviously, that's potentially why you stayed there for so long, right? Is there anything where, in regards to your sister, where you may have thought that you could have fixed but didn't, and maybe you stayed? Is there a connection there? I don't know. It's just very. It must be so hard, you having to go through losing your sister to essentially the same thing he was doing.
I suppose the connection would be that she ultimately took her own life because of her partner, and he made her feel like she was crazy, and to the point where she obviously thought that the easier way out, or not the easier way out, but the only way she could get him out of her life was to take her own life. And just before she died, she was at my house and he rang her. I took her phone off her, put it on silent, no vibrate, and put it on top of my fridge so she couldn't hear it. Because if you can't hear, you can't see, you don't go crazy. And when we got up in the morning, there was 235 missed calls. And I showed her the phone and I said, this is not crazy. This is not you being crazy. This is him. This would drive anyone crazy. And then when she died from that, I thought I can't sort of let him do that to me. I can't let him continue to make me feel like I'm crazy, because I'm not crazy. Well, I'm my own crazy, but not mentally crazy.
You're a good crazy.
Yeah, well, if such thing, but yes.
I mean, I can't even begin to even imagine what you must have been through. The fact that you must be like genuinely, you should be so proud of yourself. You know, that there are people that do take their own lives, as you well know, having someone very close to you do that and not understand, or not feeling like they do not have a way out. So you spoke to the gambling, who they called, the Gambling Anonymous. Okay. And would, I mean, in regards to if someone is going through this same position again, if you could rewind the clock for yourself, I mean, what advice would you give to the Sam previously? If
they're not doing it to you, they aren't doing it to you, and don't stay because you think, or you're so hurt that they're doing it to you, or because you feel like you can fix them, because you can't.
So your advice would be to try and get out as early as possible.
Unless you can differentiate the two, to know that they aren't doing it to you, because that's very hard to do, because you do feel like they're doing it to you.
Yeah.
But if you spoke to him separately and he's not in the gambling phase, so at the moment he's not gambling, so he's very remorseful and very sorry, but when they are gambling, they're not remorseful, they're not sorry. He will tell you, I didn't do it to you. I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah. And you're along on the journey with him. It's impossible for you to not think that. I mean, you're meant to be together. You're meant to be a team. Everything that you do affects each other. You know, it's meant to be what you do, I do for you, and vice versa. It's not meant to be you're alone in this relationship doing what you like to do for yourself. You know, it's like, hi, let's get married. But really, I'm just married to myself. I'm just going to just do my own thing. At the end of the day, you know, you want to make sure that people are not feeling like it is their fault and they're doing it to them. It's so obviously there is Gamblers Anonymous. I didn't actually know that. That's interesting to me. I didn't realize it was for the partners of the gamblers as well. I just thought it was just for the gamblers themselves. And obviously, do they try and help? Would they have tried to help your husband as well?
Yeah, but he would have to call for that. So they can only help the people that call, and they are there for family, friends that don't know how to deal with it or what they could do to help them. And if it's early on and you've got a much better mindset, I would suggest calling them and ask them how you could get them help. I didn't do that. I rang at the end when I needed to know I wasn't going mad. And which they supported that. They were like, no, it's not you. I take phone calls every day, and this is a natural way for them to behave. And once I sort of heard that, that's like, okay, great, I'm not crazy. It's not me. And then every time he would come home, I would just say over in my head, it's not me, it's not me, It's not me. It's not me. And it was the only way I could stay sane until I made that decision to leave.
And did he ever try and get help?
No.
And to this day, has he had any help at all?
No. He thinks he can do it all on his own.
Do you think financial institutions have a role to play here with this?
Yes, 100%.
What do you think they should be doing?
Well, if someone has only gambling transactions in their bank account, they definitely should not be lent any more money. If their credit cards are used for gambling only, don't increase their limits. So they play, because you cannot gamble online in Australia, you have to go international. So because the transactions are from foreign countries, they play the dumb card. How are we supposed to know that that's a gambling site? Google it, like I did. If it is the only transaction on his credit card, wouldn't that be an indication to Google it? You've had me ring you and tell you he has a gambling issue. It's nowhere noted on his file. Nowhere.
Still to this day, there's nowhere noted on the file.
Nowhere noted.
Have they lent him any money since the big gambling problem started?
Not since the 70,000, because obviously he can't pay that back. So.
Yeah. So in total, it's around the 250 mark, and obviously then you've got the mortgage on top, so around the 500,000, 600,000. So at this moment in time, you are, I'm assuming, together working on trying to get out of that. And what does that look like?
We both know that the way the cost of living are growing, we will not have another opportunity to buy in Australia if we sell now. He's actively trying to do anything he can to save it. It might be out of our control, unfortunately. So the bank may tell us we have no other option. And if that's the case, then we will sell, and obviously the rest will pay out our debts before it comes to us. So I don't think we would walk away with $1, to be quite honest. I think it would sell and pay off our debts, but we would be debt-free. So I don't know about him, if it would pay all his debts. He's not still being 100% honest about his complete overall debt picture. But either, if we save it, and then he will move out and contribute to the mortgage, and I will move back in with the children, and then I don't have the cost of rent and the mortgage. So we might be able to, at the moment I've got both.
So you have both the mortgage and the rent that you're paying. So obviously I'm hoping that you're celebrating this. I'm hoping that you are sat there looking at your position now to your position previously, and actually looking at the success of what you've achieved. I mean, if you could think about one thing that you thought you would never achieve, and you did it, what would that be?
I never thought I'd leave him.
Wow, you actually thought that?
It's very expensive to leave. It's not cheap. So if I have any advice to any women that feel that they can't leave because they are financially reliant on them, open an account that they don't know about and put $20, $10 even away. Even if it takes you 2 years, the sense of achievement at the end is much more rewarding than staying and thinking that you can't do it, because you can't do anything until you tell yourself you can.
Do you think this has changed your outlook for your future goals and what you want to succeed in now?
Of course, because previously they were as a couple or as a family, and now my goals are for me and the kids.
And what do those goals look like?
First, I just want to get one through high school and one through his primary school. Get one up on his reading at the minute is our goal. So he's a little bit behind, so we're trying to get that forward. And just to grow two kind gentlemen and put them into the world.
Yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job of that. You know, I've met them personally as well, and they are lovely human beings. So, and it's actually, you know, they always say that you end up being, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, okay? And I completely 100% believe that. You know, like sometimes you can have children that have been through absolutely nothing and they turn out really bad. You know, it's down to the individual, and you know, I think at the end of the day, it's going to make them robust, ready for the world, because the world isn't a nice place. End of story. And unfortunately, there are many lovely people and lots of positive things in the world, but some of them aren't nice. So sometimes it's maybe not so bad making them a little bit robust from the start. In regards to any awareness financially for women to make them more empowered, what would you suggest was out there for women that potentially is in the same position that you've been?
I think a safe space to discuss it. I think women feel safer and are more open to vulnerability if someone else has been through it, or someone else is willing to say it, or say the things that other people aren't willing to say.
Yeah.
And know that there's no adversity if you do say, because your feelings and what's happening in your life are your valid feelings and situation. And I don't think there's enough of that for women. I mean, you know, you've got these play groups and stuff, but that's not really the place where you go to say, you know, like, I feel like I can't leave because I'm financially dependent upon him. And I don't think there's enough education on how they don't need to be financially dependent.
Yeah, I think it's you know, it's definitely seen as a weakness. I think women all of a sudden need to be these really powerful business boss bitches, but also women that stay at home, look after the children and be the superhero, but also not be weak by needing anybody to financially support that. I think it's actually, I actually don't believe that it's going in the right direction. I think women need a lot more financial education. And I think, you know, people need to sort of stand up and help that and support, to give people advice and educate them on what they're going to do going forward in regards to, like, if, for instance, you know, they knew that they could talk and they could speak out loud and they weren't going to look weak in front of people. I mean, would you suggest that they should be talking to their close ones, even people that they might have fallen out with before? You know, did you do that? Did you go back to people even though you knew, were they really annoyed at you?
One girlfriend that's probably the strongest girl I've ever known in my life, and she would be as honest and as abrupt and as fronting as it would make me uncomfortable, but she'd be like, the old Sam wouldn't do this. Ooh, who is this new Sam? When are you going to wake up to yourself? How many times are you going to ring me and tell me this happened before you go, enough is enough? And she was right. And sometimes you need to hear that. Don't get me wrong, I didn't ring her often because I didn't like hearing it very often.
Yeah. Well, maybe we all need a friend like that. You know, I think it's really, really true when you don't want to hear something. Sometimes, like you said earlier, that you isolated yourself, and it's probably because you didn't want someone to actually tell you the truth. And obviously the truth does hurt, but the truth is also, you know, what can set you free, I suppose. I'm going to link some resources for some people below, so we can make sure that other people have the resources they need to potentially get out of this as early as you can, even if it's late, middle, end. It doesn't matter. There is always a way out, right? I mean, you lasted 8 years. So if you can do it, anybody else can do it, right? I'm actually going to start a tradition on this podcast. And we're going to end with me asking you one question. And that is, I would like you to tell me what you think your superpower is.
My empathy. I can empathize with anybody. And I empathized with my husband for a very, very long time. I could see his point of view. He unfortunately couldn't see mine.
That's a lovely superpower. That's really nice. Well, I'm hoping that you can take that and maybe use it towards yourself this time. I think someone else needs some empathy. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
You are one incredible woman.
Thank you.
And your newfound strength. And I hope your journey going on is going to be a much better one.
Thanks, Carly.
More happier. Thanks, Sam. Thank you. Thanks for listening to an episode of Financial Survivor Stories. If you really loved what you heard today, then please like and share and subscribe and all those kind of things.
and share to people that you think that this could be really valuable for. And we will look forward to seeing you again next time.